So, good evening. Today is Thursday, October the 2nd of 2025, and it's around 8 p.m. Central Standard Time here in the United States as I'm making this video. Tonight I have a very different topic from my regular topics. We will look at the Ukraine-Russian war there in a separate video here in the next weeks or so. But tonight I wanted to get into the future of AI, artificial intelligence, and the impact this is going to have on our societies and especially on our governments, primarily in Europe, in the Western world, here the United States, Canada, Australia, all these larger countries, which have a parliamentary democracy or some form of a democratic framework to operate in. And we go a little bit, just a tad bit back in history here to actually understand this. The Industrial Revolution, as we know, started with the invention in the United Kingdom with the steam engine and everything what evolved out of it. The second Industrial Revolution started around 1880, and then I'm not quite sure when the third Industrial Revolution started, but that was the beginning, I would say probably the late 1950s, early 1960s, when the semiconductors, the transistor, started to be commercially produced in larger quantities or large quantities. And it made its way into a field which I work in, which is the industrial automation. And that was the beginning where, driven in capitalist societies by the search of cheap labor, there was the consensus that automation could replace the low-skilled to no-skilled workers more reliably, cheaper, without any, tax payments into the Social Security funds, income withholdings, federal, employment taxes and all of that stuff. Income tax, so to speak, for the worker. Now, whenever capitalism is in search of cheap labor, this usually goes two ways. You can either move a production into a country where there is cheap labor compared to your own country available at the same level or roughly the same level, and you just move your production means, capabilities over there and hire those people and let go of the people in your country, which you have been paying higher wages. So is the idea behind it. Now, this is great. However, in our Western world since World War II, we have instituted almost across the board social security systems which are comprised of a healthcare portion, health insurance, retirement funds, and unemployment insurance, and then what we call in the United States workers' comp, which is accident insurance when you get injured or disabled on a job while you're working. In most countries, the workers' comp or the accident insurance is covered solely by the employer. The other three payments are usually divided equally between employer and employee. Here in the United States, it varies a little bit. You don't have to offer it. But as an employee, you have to pay into what we call Social Security. That is the retirement fund you're paying into when you want to draw or you want to get retired. Our legal age now is 67. It was 65 until this year. They raised it to 67. You can apply at reduced benefits at the age of 62. And at that point, you're going to be able to get Medicaid, which is the health insurance for the population over 62 and older, which covers most of it, but you probably have to get supplemental insurance. So these, and then of course, unemployment insurance. Those insurance segments are basically dependent upon the amount of people working out of the overall population. And then there's another big ticket item. That is the government with your income taxes, which usually the employer withholds the income tax. In the United States, we have the federal government, and some states also the state income tax has to be withheld by the employer, and they have to send that in weekly or monthly or every 3 months. The government doesn't want to wait that long for it. So that is the working group, and it doesn't matter here, at least in the United States, is if you have a part-time job, you work only 5 hours a week, or you're working 100 hours a week, it doesn't matter. Even, or salaried, that means you're getting a monthly salary or weekly salary, whatever the case might be. In our system now, with the governments, especially in the United States and over in Europe, have grown to such a size based on a model they have come up with, which requires what we call full employment. And full employment is pretty much reached when the able-bodied adults, say like from age 18 until regular retirement age, now age 67, is actively working. Preferably 1 or 2 part-time jobs or a full-time job, or even sometimes 2 full-time jobs. We have people who do that too. And because that is the main source of tax revenue for the federal government. That is no different in Germany, in France, or in any other European country. It is going to be the same almost in the Russian Federation, or almost every other country relies heavily on those people who are employed for tax revenue, for to have the government operating to provide all of the services and programs and God knows what else, and the security for the population because of this. Now, on the other end, you have basically Wall Street. Wall Street has become the world dominant force in opposition to anything government. And what the Wall Street people are looking for as being pure capitalists is cheap labor. So all the jobs basically in Europe, in Western Europe before 1990, when all the changes occurred, were what we called in Germany, and I remember that growing up, that was on the evening news. The German word was, let me think about it, I just thought about it a minute ago, was rationalisiert, Rationalisierungsmaßnahmen. That was the official term when a factory changed from manual assembly done by assembly workers on an assembly line to a automated process, either through machines or robots. And that started to take hold, form, shape, probably, I think, from the 1960s, mid-1960s. And that became more and more of a problem because we were now basically laying off or not hiring people with a lower education and without any particular skill sets, like as an apprentice or master craftsman or craftsman to begin with. And so that segment of the population became then unemployed. And again, what I started out with, what the idea is full employment. Full employment for a nation is about 3 to 5% unemployed out of the overall able-bodied adult segment. Here we have this when you are no longer searching for a job in the United States and you're not collecting unemployment, actually, you're basically dropping out what we call out of the workforce. We call this the workforce. That is the able-bodied adults. And a lot of people drop out because they have put a nest egg together. They have money invested in the stock market. They don't have to rely on Social Security for their pension and that sort of stuff. But in average, in every country, all of our Western democracies need to have full employment. That means the majority, great majority of all able-bodied adults have to be part of the workforce and need to be gainfully employed for our systems to work, for our democracies to work, for the government to function the way they have to set up. Now, whenever we do this shifting, like we did in the third industrial revolution when we went to automation, then the number of active people in the workforce decreases. They first become unemployed. They're going to get through training and they're going to try to get them into different jobs, in different professions and that sort of stuff. That kind of worked because the industries needed then more service workers, or people in the service sector. And that increased since the 1970s in a wide variety, of jobs became available. New jobs were added. With the introduction of computers, we needed people for data entry, data processing, and that sort of stuff. And now, with AI, and the reason why I'm making this video is because Lufthansa, the German airline, is one of the first corporations, major corporations, who have announced this week, I think it was on Tuesday, which was just a short, small notice, that they're going to lay off 5,000 employees, active employees, out of their workforce in Germany, and they're going to be substituted by AI. And these are now service-oriented or service sector jobs, first of all, and they are already now jobs in higher education areas, because there's a lot of jobs AI can replace with secretaries, legal secretaries, paralegals, ticketing and customer service and all of this stuff. And this is how fast this is being implemented. Now, Lufthansa is only one example. Now, let's take 5,000 jobs and you multiply this into 100 or by 100 German companies who are going to lay off 5,000. You're gonna look now at 500,000 people unemployed or dropping out of the workforce. That is an immediate loss of revenue for the government. If you do this, if 1,000 companies do this, you have 5 million people unemployed in no time. Because the transition from what we are seeing here in the United States, from having AI taking over all of these jobs, is going to go very quickly. So this is going to cause a problem. So you have 5 million. That is coming. It's not when, but it is coming. How quickly is the only question. And now you have, in Germany as example, Friedrich Merz, the new chancellor, running around telling everyone he's going to put all of these people back to work, while his corporate sector is basically applying the gospel from Wall Street to get rid of labor, any form of labor in paychecks, and substitute this with AI. AI doesn't get sick. AI doesn't have to pay income taxes. AI doesn't, pay into Social Security, retirement, none of this stuff, health insurance, nothing. Same thing, the way the machines took over, the robots took over, the automated assembly lines took over back in the 70s and 80s. In the production areas, that's now happening in the office areas, in customer relations. Now we're going after white-collar jobs, all of them. There is no limit anymore with skill sets or no skill sets. And this is going to change everything, what we have known. And it's going to have come a lot faster, at a lot lower cost than the industrial automation came in the 70s and 80s, where they had to build huge assembly lines and robots and a lot of hardware and that stuff. This is only software, and all you need is a high-powered computer and fast, high-speed internet access or communications in an intranet in a corporation, where this can be almost implemented within 1 week, this whole thing, because AI has advanced that quickly, that fast. So this is going to change our societies, our way of life, the way we think, the way we do things, and it will change our governments. Here in the United States, since Trump has taken over, you have heard, maybe if you're not in the United States, that he's laying off tens of thousands of federal workers for the federal government. Part of it because of the takeover of AI. He's demonstrating this on how this works. Other companies like Federal Express, UPS, anyone who has customer service, the cell phone companies, all of the stuff already, when you have questions about your bill, is already all automated and at various different levels has AI incorporated. We're not even talking to people. And at the same time, all of the tax revenues are starting to shrink. So here is my question, is I have watched the news and read the different newspapers in Germany or in France and in England or in the United Kingdom, Great Britain. And it seems like there's not one politician over in Europe talking about this, on how the governments actually think, on how they're going to cope with the shortfall in tax revenue they're going to experience, while they're coming up with even crazier and bigger ideas on how to spend and get further into debt with the war in the Ukraine and other programs they want to do. We have a similar issue here, that we have a record deficit and a record debt, and they're desperately trying to get this down or stopped so they can actually adjust to this, what there is to come, which is going to be a major shortfall in all these contributions because of people being out of work. How are they going to be able to pay for the unemployment for that period of time, and how much the corporations are going to pay, is what we call a golden parachute when you're trying to get someone out of the active as an employee who hasn't done anything wrong. You can't just fire them, so you give them a golden parachute for a time to bridge this over. That philosophy in capitalism is that something new is going to come out of this. But if I start a new business up, I'm going to look at this first, if I'm going to use AI or if I'm going to hire people. And of course, AI costs me more money up front to purchase it or to, lease it for 1 year or whatever, versus hiring someone where I have immediate payroll and this, that, and the other thing, cost associated with it, whether they're working at home home office or they're coming into my business to actually work here. So this is going to change everything. And this is something I'm not hearing any public discussions about from the politicians. Now, if you remember, I made the video about the party event there in North Rhine-Westphalia, where Merz spoke for almost an hour and I listened to it. He only pointed out that Germany was desperate, as to desperately trying to adopt this new technology. And on the other hand, as he goes in front of the news cameras and tells everyone he doesn't want to pay any more money to people who need welfare benefits. Because that is the end stadium in this, when you are out of unemployment and you cannot get any employment, especially with these large numbers, what we're going to expect. These people have to be cared for, and that means they're going to wind up on welfare. Otherwise, you're going to have a revolution on your hands. And these people have not publicly or politically addressed this like Merz did at that party convention in North Rhine-Westphalia there a few weeks ago, which I made a video about. So this is something I'm not sure if these politicians, whether it's here in the United States, in Australia, New Zealand, any other country you can take, are aware of this. Are they actively looking for solutions for this? What are the solutions? No one is talking about it. And we're not hearing it in the mainstream media, or even hear the discussions on YouTube are virtually non-existent about this. This is food for thought, and I'm really looking forward to your comments. And then we will see, we will see which way this is going to develop. And with that, I wish you a great evening.